Hi, I'm Sheryl Butchin. I'm here with Jeri Corb from Workforce Delivered, and she's the Vice President, Workforce Solutions. And this is our podcast, Outsourcing Isn't a Dirty Word. I love that title. Jeri is a seasoned and goal oriented workforce solutions executive, boasting a rich history of accomplishments in healthcare, wellness, and fitness sectors. With over 22 years of dedicated experience, she has honed her expertise in strategic planning, workforce solutions, physician relations management, and employee wellness. Armed with a Master's of Science degree, Jeri brings a blend of academic knowledge and practical know how to her professional endeavors. Her career journey is marked by a consistent drive to deliver results and cultivate strong relations with clients and stakeholders alike. In her role, Jeri excels in crafting and implementing strategic initiatives that drive business growth and enhance client satisfaction. She is recognized for her ability to navigate complex challenges, inspire teams, and foster a culture of excellence within organizations. Jeri's commitment to excellence, coupled with her profound understanding of the intricacies of healthcare landscape, make her a valuable asset to any team or organization aiming to thrive in today's competitive market. She continues to be a driving force in the industry, shaping the future of client success and business development through her initiative approaches and unwavering dedication to success. And I just want to welcome you to our recording today.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for
Thanks for
being
having me.
here. Your background is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. I'll start with the first question. Most organizations still treat staffing as a transactional function. At what point does workforce management become a strategic operating model instead?
Well, I guess that can sometimes be $1 million question, right?
Yes.
It really becomes strategic when labor decisions are no longer just about filling openings, but really to supporting the actual overall business plan for the organization, which includes things like protecting margins and making sure the organization has the right capability in place at the right time. But, in my experience being in this industry, working on the agency side and a facility side, and also too on the MSP side, in my experience, that shift really happens when leadership starts looking at workforce planning as an operating discipline, not just a recruiting activity, whether it falls under talent acquisition or HR, right? It has to be wholesome.
Exactly.
Really, right now, what we're seeing across the market is that a lot of organizations are realizing that staffing isn't separate from operations or finance, right? And once those
Exactly.
conversations start coming together, workforce management becomes more strategic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How should executives think about their workforce as an integrated system rather than separate buckets like full time, contingent, and contract labor?
And over the course, I've been in this industry since 2001. And most often, you have the CFO over here talking about budgets, you have the CNO over here talking about needing to fill certain shifts. Then you have the charge nurse just sitting there saying, "Where do I put these patients?" Right? And so it's this conundrum basically that happens if there's not a wholesome approach to it. So really, in my opinion, the better way to look at it is really as one workforce strategy, but with
Right.
different labor channels, because the work itself doesn't just arrive in neat buckets, right? Like we'd all like to. And what we're seeing more broadly in the market right now, in particular in the healthcare space, is a move towards total talent, or what some are coining integrated workforce thinking. I've heard that term before, and where leaders are looking across full-time and contingent labor instead of optimizing them separately. Right? Like, where can we have that healthy balance of contingent labor to reduce burnout, to fill those gaps, and then so that we can give time to the talent acquisition team or even an outside vendor to help us place that full-time placement, but then keep that contingent labor percentage at a very low percentage, but at a healthy percentage so they can use it optimally. Because again, in our experience, when those categories are managed in that isolation type of mentality, companies usually miss the bigger opportunity, which is really matching the right type of talent to the work, the timing, and then, of course, the level of flexibility that the business actually needs. So that's kind of that in summary.
Good. Good. I'm glad you said it like that. When you say cost efficient workforce solutions, where are companies actually losing money today without realizing it?
Well, in our experience, a lot of the loss is not obvious on day one. It really shows up in fragmented vendor usage if they are utilizing the contingent labor, which includes inconsistent bill rates, poor forecasting, and just too many handoffs across the hiring process. Another area is when full time and contingent labor are managed on separate tracks. Because, like I referenced before, the leaders can end up making one part of the workforce look efficient while total labor spend keeps climbing. So, again, it needs to all be under one umbrella. And finally, I would say that delayed decision making can get expensive. So, when teams do not have clear data, they tend to make last minute labor choices. And those are usually the most expensive ones.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that that occurred when I was at Encompass Health when they kept bringing in those travel nurses during
Mhm.
just the tail end of the COVID. And those travel nurses were their billable hours were much higher than our full-time staff and
Mhm.
our PRN. So
Mhm.
they lost track of those separate billing items because of
Mhm.
that.
Yeah,
So
and
I
then when you don't have a
understand.
single pane of glass to look at it, you may have 4 or 5 different vendors that are submitting the same type of clinician for 4 or 5 different bill rates. And at the end of the day, you're really not optimizing what the market rates are and have, contractors start or even have extensions in place based on market rates. So it's vitally important to have that single pane of glass across the entire spectrum for sure.
Okay, that's great. Companies want speed in hiring, especially in healthcare and high demand sectors. How do you balance speed with compliance and control without breaking the system?
I think again it comes down to different swim lanes or departments, however you want to put people in different buckets as far as for titles and what they're responsible for in an organization. They must talk. They must compare notes, right? Especially if you're bringing in an outside vendor, and because really the answer is not to trade compliance for speed. It's really to build a process that's ready before the urgent needs show up. Oftentimes, many of these decisions to bring on vendors or extra vendors is done in a very reactive mode.
Right.
So emails start flying, and then, maybe Char and the compliance team may end up leaving out health or vice versa, right? And then there's vital records or information that needs to be had for anybody that steps on foot on campus, whether it's Joint Commission certified or if the state, is the governance entity there for that facility. And that's just in healthcare in general. It's the same thing across other spectrum as well. For even for non-clinical, even general labor, you have compliance needs and requirements, and everyone at an organization needs to talk if HR or their talent acquisition team aren't bringing in that talent. And so, really, we'll go back to the healthcare bubble for a second. In that space, speed works best when credentialing, verification, and documentation are already standardized. Okay. And that removes the friction without lowering the bar every
Right.
single time, right? And really, what the stronger organizations tend to do is not improvising every time for every type of need, whether it be on the provider side, mid levels, clinical, non clinical. They have clear standards from the beginning. They invite only trusted partners and have visibility into who is qualified, cleared, and ready to work. And it's the same type of requirements every single time. And that takes time, right? It takes time, it takes communication. People actually have to schedule meetings for, at one time and all be in the same room and all stack their hands on what does this look like for us and what is going to be approved. What is going to be the easiest for us to track in general?
Mm, well said. You talk about centralized data and visibility. What decisions can leaders make with that data that they could not make before.
And it seems intuitive, right? That you would think that they would
Yeah.
combine the data, and oftentimes they don't. They're just looking at the general cost of the labor, but then are they really comparing that to how much are these open positions costing the organization? And again, that could be in any sector, right? And so is it financially feasible to bring in contract, although that could be and come at a much higher price point on an hourly rate, but you're not paying that person benefit. You have cancellation, clauses that you can have with these individuals. And is it bringing in revenue for the organization, or can the organization do without having someone in those positions? And so at the end of the day, all of that stuff means is that they can finally compare labor options side by side and make better decisions about when a role should be filled internally through contingent labor or through another workforce channel, whether it be scope of work or outside payrolling. There's all sorts of creative new ways that you can partner with outside vendors today if they don't fall underneath your own umbrella. And again, if you have all of this data, then you can start spotting spending patterns, rate inconsistencies, and also to the demands, right? The demand trends, really, which gives everybody a better shot of planning instead of that reaction that I talked about a few minutes ago, right? So, really, at the end of the day, most importantly, centralized visibility lets leaders connect those workforce decisions to business outcomes. And it really brings in all the leaders in that one room and one space, and everybody's looking at the same dashboard. And that's again when workforce data stops being just reporting and starts being decision report. So that's data is king, and I love data.
I do too. And then you have a real forecast of your revenue and your margins and all that stuff
100%.
that's
Mhm.
fragmented or
Mhm.
separate from the different bills and that
Yes.
type of thing.
Yep.
So, do you want to share with us how you started working for Workforce Delivered or how you got involved with that company?
Absolutely. I've been in the industry since 2001. I've worked for big staffing agencies, and then I worked for an emergency medicine management group for a while. And then I worked for a two-hospital system down in South Louisiana for a little bit. And it's sort of a different role on the employee wellness side. And then I got back into the staffing world back in 2019, working for a large managed service provider company. And through different folks and knowing folks who work for our parent company, which is Viemed Healthcare. They're a publicly traded company. One thing led to another in regards to them having the idea of what does a post-COVID workforce solutions look like, not just in the healthcare space, right? All different sectors. And if anyone's been keeping up with Louisiana economic development, they're on fast track to bring in many new and large businesses to the state. I think to date it's over $80 billion in signed leases for companies coming in that would bring in the revenue here to the state. So that only means that's going to also generate a whole slew of new jobs in the state. And it's not just in oil and gas like a lot of people assume. It goes across the spectrum between a Meta plant, a Hyundai steel plant, and the list goes on. That's coming in here. And so they were getting a lot of questions in regards to how do we manage all of these different vendors? Again, not just in the healthcare space. Could be in the government level, it could be non-clinical, could just be a large corporation that just historically has only used outside vendors, even for those, entry level positions, truck drivers even, right? Admin
In
assistants.
automotive, you mentioned.
Right. Right, exactly. And so they challenged me to come in here and kind of put all of my experience to the test and start something brand new. Typically, a managed service provider is spun off of an existing staffing agency. That's typically how it's happened in the healthcare industry for the past 3 decades at least. But for this one, we wanted to do a little bit different. And so they brought in myself, and then they recruited several other leaders to support this entire organization to just start from scratch, from the ground up, and have an industry agnostic MSP set up to where we bring in best practices that we all learned in the healthcare space, because all of us come from the healthcare space, from
Okay.
staffing and the MSP side, but really make it to where anybody can have this as a value add to their organization. And I tell you, since we've hit the ground running in January of 2025, we've had great reception. We have a handful of clients already that have signed contracts with us, and we're proving that it doesn't have to just be in that healthcare space. We're diversifying it, and yes, they do have some MSPs existing in the IT space and oil and gas, but overall, those folks in those different MSP programs would just sort of stay in their swim lane, whereas we're welcoming all of them, that we can have a good, diverse group of clients. So we're excited. We're excited about
That
what the
is
future
so
holds.
exciting, and I am really happy for you and your team
Thank you.
that are working behind the scenes.
Yes.
And I really thank you for being on this
Yes,
recording
absolutely.
today. It was so great to get to know you better and to learn what's behind the scenes and all of that. And I'm excited for the state too, with all these new industries coming in and all this new revenue for the
And it
state.
doesn't help. We have great people and great food, so it's just awesome.
I already knew you had great people and great food because my sister-in-law's from there, but you're great as well. So
Oh, thank
thank you for
you.
joining me today, and I will talk to you very soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Cheryl. Have a good day. Okay, bye bye.